Hi, my name's Rich, and today we're going to be talking about the Abberant Mind Sorcerer for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It's a pretty cool subclass that can be found in Tashas Cauldron of Everything. But before that, I want to announce that it's been 1 year since I started making these videos, and I've had a great experience so far. I hope you've enjoyed the videos, and we're at 2,600 subscribers at the moment, which is fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything more. To celebrate, I've designed a subclass for the fighter. It should be available on the Patreon, which is linked down below, and it's completely free. You're more than welcome to go over there and download it for free and leave me some feedback. Tell me what you think. It's more of a support-based fighter subclass, and it's got some pretty unique mechanics, so yeah, check it out. Well, let's get started on the video then. The background with the Abberant Mind Sorcerer is it's a Psionic class, but it doesn't share psionic dice like the Soul Blade and other psionic-based subclasses. And this is a good thing, because having two different pools of die is overly complicated and unnecessary when it comes to these games. I'm a firm believer that streamlining the player experience helps move the narrative forward in a concise way. With the Abberant Mind Sorcerer, because it's a psychic-based subclass, it has the benefit of allowing you to decide where the origins come from, and it just describes the abilities you have. For example, on the background in Tashas Cauldron of Everything, the Aberrant Mind gets this text. An alien influence has wrapped its tendrils around your mind, giving you psionic power. You can now touch other minds with that power and alter the world around you by using it to control a magical energy of the multiverse. You can now touch other minds with that power and alter the world around you by using it to control the magical energy of the universe. Will this power shine from you as a hopeful beacon to others? Or will you be a source of terror to those who feel the stab of your mind and witness the strange manifestations of your might? With regards to the origins of the Aberrant Mind, there's actually a 1d6 table in the book which gives you lots of different options and inspirations. They're ranging from things like a parasitic twin, that is the source of your power, to psychic wind from the astral plane, granting you these abilities, all the way to being exposed to the far realm's warping influence and having a phantom tentacle growing on you that no one else can see. I particularly like the Aboleth option and the Mind Flayer Tadpole. If you're more interested in the Mind Flayers, then you should check out Baldur's Gate 3. It has the Mind Flayers as the big bad villain of the game, and it's quite a fun game as well. When it comes to races for the Aberrant Mind, I think with most sorcerers, the Tiefling and the Half-Elf are both good options, and I was debating whether to put the Aasimar in here, but that's a more Christian angelic theme than an Outer Reaches from Beyond the Stars theme. This actually has a lot in common with the Great Old One Warlock thematically, but of course the mechanical differences between the Sorcerer and the Warlock make them vastly different characters to play as. The Great Old One has less spell slots and a limited spell pool, but it does have better cantrips, and it has access to Eldritch Blast and Hex at low levels, so it makes it a great low-level caster. One of the key features that makes the Aberrant Mind stand out from other Warlock subclasses is the fact that it can gain access to other spells from Sorcerer, Warlock or Wizard spell lists. There must be Divination or Enchantment, but still it's quite a powerful thing to have. With the feats for the Aberrant Mind, the obvious ones are the Metamagic Adept and an Inspiring Leader. They're great fits for any Sorcerer subclass, but I would also recommend the Telekinetic feat, found in Tashas Cauldron of Everything. This really helps use your bonus action economically, and it's a useful way to have an impact in combat, and you can use it in more roleplay heavy settings as well. It ties in perfectly thematically with the whole telepathic, astral touched archetype. And speaking of the spells, we'll go over some of the spells that the Aberrant Mind gets access to. At level 1, you get Arms of Hadar, Dissonant Whispers, and Mind Sliver. Arms of Hadar is a good first level spell if you're wanting to get into melee and close combat, but it is centered around you, so you have to be up close, which is kind of contradictory to the theme of the sorcerer with a low hit point pool. Still, it's something to have in your back pocket in case you get into melee distance. Dissonant Whispers is another first level spell, and it's just a good way to deal a lot of psychic damage. It can be used to manipulate the battlefield as well, but I think the real star of the show is Mind Sliver, which is a cantrip. But as cantrips go, it's a really powerful one. Yes, it only has the 1d6 psychic damage, 2d6 at level 5, 11th level gets 3d6, and 17 gets 4d6, but the fact you can subtract 1d4 from the next saving throw before the end of your next turn really turns the tide in combat. It remains useful even in higher levels. And the range is okay. It's not fantastic, and because it's an int save, it's not so good against other magic users, but if you're up against more wild creatures, then go wild with it. At 3rd level, you get Detect Thoughts and Calm Emotions. Now, Detect Thoughts is good for roleplay, and it lasts for 1 minute, but I think that in combat it doesn't really have much use. Just beware with Detect Thoughts that the creature will know that you're probing their mind if you focus on them for too long. So if you want to try and stay hidden in a crowd, then you can just get the surface level thoughts from them. Calm Emotions can be used to negate combat altogether if you're able to calm a more dumb creature out in the wild. It does last 1 minute, and it ceases hostility, but you have to play around it very manipulatively. You can't just say, okay, he's charmed, let's everybody get ready for the next attack. At 5th level, you get Hunger of Hadar and Sending. Sending is one of the best out of combat 3rd level spells. As you get to 5th level, you'll be going up in a tier of the game, level 1 to level 5, level 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. So the scope of the game should be increasing. Having Sending available helps you negate the distance problem you'll find when you start moving around outside of local towns and into other places, other areas. And if you have any spare spell slots at the end of the day before you go for a long rest, then throw out a Sending. It can always be a fantastic way to get some roleplay involved. Now, Hunger of Hadar, 3rd level spell that lasts for 1 minute. It does have quite a strong range at 150 feet, and it is area of effect. Essentially, you're making a void bubble. It deals damage over a course of time if you stay in the ball, and I love the description here. Any creature that ends its turn in the area must succeed on a dex saving throw or take 2d6 acid damage as milky otherworldly tentacles rub against it. Ugh, disgusting. At level 7 you get Evard's Black Tentacles and Summon Aberration. Now when you start summoning creatures from beyond the stars, you can get some really weird creatures coming in, so collaborate with your DM and try and use your imagination because it can get really out there. Mechanically, Summon Aberration is a great way to try and turn the action economy in your favour. The more creatures you have on the field, the more attacks you've got, and the more it's going to tie up other enemies. And the great thing is it scales up. As you get to higher levels, the creature gets more powerful. And just remember, outside of combat, the duration is 1 hour for Summon Aberration, so you can always summon it to do menial tasks or to try and go through a dungeon that's full of traps to try and trigger them all. The text says it does obey your verbal commands, but I'm sure the DM can have some fun with trying to fight against you and being a bit grouchy with the creature. Now, Evard's Black Tentacles is just a straight up damaging spell, great for combat. Area of effect, 90 foot, and the creature must succeed on a dex saving throw or take bludgeoning damage, 3d6, and be restrained. So this can turn the tide of battle if you have a lot of ranged characters fighting with you. Against wizards and less strong or dexterous enemies, then this thing can keep them restrained and really make a difference. Finally, at level 9, you get Telekinesis and Rary's Telepathic Bond. Now, Telekinesis is good, but I've already recommended it in the feats section, so whether you take that feat or not depends on whether you're going to be committed to Telekinesis at level 9. Outside of combat, in combat, Telekinesis is always helpful. It's concentration for 10 minutes, and it does have a 60-foot range, but if you're in a stealthy mission or if it's a non-combat mission, you can still use this to really manipulate the area around you. And when you are in combat, you can restrain creatures and suspend them up in midair. So it's almost like a stasis bubble of sorts. And finally, Rary's Telepathic Bond. This is like the sending or a message cantrip, but 8 willing creatures at the same time. Lasts for 1 hour, it's divination, and it's a 5th level spell. So there are other better spells you can choose for the 5th level spell slot, but I think if you already have a great bank of spells, then Telepathic Bond is just a nice little addition. If you're going underwater, or if you're going into like a dark cavern, for example, being able to communicate with everybody like a giant WhatsApp group is quite helpful. I think you could say Rary's Telepathic Bond is just a Discord call. So, speaking of which, why don't you check out the Discord for the channel? It's linked in the description and we can continue the conversation in there. So let's check out the abilities of this subclass. At level 1, you gain access to telepathic speech. It doesn't have a cap on how many times you can use it, it's not restricted to short or long rests. The downside is you can only communicate with one other person, and it does take a bonus action, so that can be useful when you're out of fights or you're trying to scout an area. If someone else is scouting ahead of you, you can relay the information to the rest of the group. I do find it strange that it's restricting the number of miles equal to your charisma modifier. I don't really understand why you would have a restriction on such a long range. And another restriction is you must both know the same language, so that's another downgrade compared to a lot of other telepathic abilities. This can be used as a replacement for the sending spell, so that does make sending a little bit less useful. But as a level 1 ability, I think it's a great addition, and it's strong out of combat, but it's not game breaking. This can alleviate a lot of the bureaucracy involved with communicating with people and tying up loose ends. It's worth noting that the way it's written, it does not restrict you to people you've met in the past. So if you have an idea of what the person is called and you share the same language, then in theory you can talk to them. It really doesn't make sense that it's restricted to 30 feet and then it has the miles modifier on top of that. But I'm sure there are some niche situations where you can use this, but generally speaking, it just feels like it's trying to put some downsides to this ability just because it's a level 1 ability. At level 6, you gain access to the Psionic Sorcery ability. When you cast any spell of level 1 or higher from your Psionic Spells feature, you can cast it by expending a spell slot as normal, or by spending a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level. If you cast it using sorcery points, it doesn't require verbal or somatic components, unless it's got consumable spell components. So this can be useful for putting out more spells per long rest, but overall it's not a fantastic ability. I think it can save you 1 or 2 sorcery points, so it's more of an economic bonus than anything else. And on the upside, you don't have to spend your bonus action to convert the sorcery points, so it gives you a little bit more flexibility, but it's not as good as a lot of people are making it out to be. And of course the restriction about retraining spells, psionic spells. I'm not 100% sure what the definition is. I think as rules is written, it works with retrained spells, since you still got them from the feature, but you might want to hold off on that. You might want to check with the DM, just so you're both on the same page and there's no contradictions in the future. Also at level 6, you gain resistance to psychic damage, and you have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. Well, resistance to anything is fantastic for any class. I think psychic damage is not the most common type of damage. It's very campaign specific. If you're fighting against mind flayers, or if you're fighting against more psychic enemies, or if you're playing a more cosmic campaign, then this can have its advantages. But I think the main takeaway from this is having advantage on saving throws against charmed or frightened. If you're going against a succubi or an incubi, or even just a frightening creature. If you're playing a Ravenloft campaign, then having advantage against frightened can be useful. At level 14 you get Revelation in Flesh. It costs a single sorcery point, and all of these abilities are amazing. It's got a lot of flexibility and allows you lots of different options, and it's basically like a free second level spell essentially. Now let's go through what sort of abilities you can use. You can unleash the aberrant truth hidden within yourself. As a bonus action, you can spend 1 or more sorcery points to magically transform your body for 10 minutes. For each sorcery point you spend, you can gain one of the following benefits of your choice, the effects of which last until the transformation ends. You can see any invisible creatures within 60 feet of you, providing it isn't behind total cover. Your eyes also turn black or become writhing sensory tendrils. It's quite gross. You gain a flying speed equal to your walking speed, and you can hover. As you fly, your skin glistens with mucus or shines with otherworldly light. You can gain swimming speed equal to twice your walking speed, and you can breathe underwater. You grow gills and your fingers become webbed. And lastly, your body, along with any equipment you're wearing or carrying, becomes slimy and pliable. You can move through any space as narrow as 1 inch without squeezing, and you can spend 5 feet of movement to escape from non-magical restraints or being grappled. So it's all abilities connected to movement or restriction. At level 14, it's not going to be focused a lot on combat. These abilities are more utility abilities. But hey, if you get more options, then at no extra cost, it's always better to have more options. I think this subclass really shines with the broad array of options you have available to you. And finally, its Capstone ability, at level 18, you get Warping Implosion. You can unleash your aberrant power as a space warping anomaly. As an action, you can teleport to an unoccupied space you can see within 120 feet of you. Nice range. Immediately after you disappear, each creature within 30 feet of the space you left must make a strength saving throw, and on a fail save it takes 3d10 force damage, and is pulled straight towards the space you left, ending in an unoccupied space as close as your former space as possible. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pulled. And this is tied to your long rest, or you can spend 5 sorcery points to use it again. Now this has natural synergy with some of the area of effect spells like Hunger of Hadar and Evard's Black Tentacles, and it almost feels like just a powered up version of Thunderstep. While this is a great ability, at 18th level, dealing 3d10 damage is not... I don't know if it's on par with the rest of the subclasses and abilities you can gain access to, but cinematically, this sounds fantastic. Being able to warp to another dimension or walk between planes for flavor text, it must set this ability up to be an amazing cinematic moment. Overall, I think this subclass is quite interesting. It has some powerful abilities without being game-breaking. And having the ability to gain access to all those different spells really puts us head and shoulders above a lot of the other subclasses you can pick for Sorcerer. I'm not trying to decry this subclass, but I think that the other subclasses should have access to more spells, just like this one and the Clockwork Soul. But I'm sure we'll see something in the future, possibly a reimagining of what the Sorcerer will be. So, let me know what you think down in the comments. How do you think it compares to Storm Sorcery or Shadow Magic? And I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. But my name's Rich, and thanks for watching. Bye!